Hello, Tim Warner here. In this session, I want to talk about computer books. In other words, books that deal with information technology, not so much evergreen topics like IT trends, but specific computer books. For example, when I was new to the industry and got my first job in IT, I was asked to conduct a seminar on mail merge using Microsoft Word. And I was so young and had so little industry experience, I didn't even know what a mail merge was. So what did I do? I bought Microsoft Word for Dummies in my local B. Dalton bookseller and learned very quickly and delivered the session, and the rest is history. That was fine for 1997. However, we're here in 2023. And, honestly, let me just cut right to the chase and front load my message. Print books, physical books, old school paper books, dead trees, are not a good fit for IT unless it's the most broad and evergreen of topics. Maybe the theory of artificial intelligence. But anything practical, whether it's related to an IT certification or a product or a job role, IT just moves too quickly now for the publishing industry. I've worked part-time or full-time in the publishing industry for a long time now. The first book that I actually wrote was in 1999, I think it was. And even back then, through the mists of time, I was bitten by fast-moving technology. What do I mean by that? Well, my first book was a study guide on the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, or MCSE certification in Windows NT. So this is going back a while. And I was really stoked, and it was a really nice ego boost and just a really nice validating experience to have my own book. It's something I've always wanted to do. But the problem was, literally within the first month of this book's release into the world, Microsoft canceled the MCSE certification and went on to something different. I don't remember what it was that time. Maybe it was just MCSE and Windows 2000. It's probably what it was. But basically, my book was shipped dead on arrival because of IT changing like that, even back in the 90s. That was a lesson. I should have learned my lesson, but I wound up writing a dozen or more additional books and contributing to several dozen more and helping produce, I don't know how many more on top of that when I worked for Pearson and Cisco Press. But long story short, especially nowadays with cloud computing, I can't imagine doing another print book. I mean, it is enjoyable to an extent. It's a meditative experience to write a print book, and if you geek out on the craft of writing, there's a lot to like there. If you geek out on templates and style guides and that kind of stuff, which I do. This ties to a long-standing thesis that you'll find throughout my YouTube channel, that when you've found your professional passion, work becomes a great joy instead of a great drudge. But the truth of the matter is, I know I keep repeating that, is that the print book publishing machine still operates in terms of months and years, but IT changes sometimes on a daily basis. I did write a dummies book for Microsoft Azure. I did that more for any other reason, honestly, than basically nostalgia. Self-nostalgia is a way to pay it forward because the dummies books were so helpful to me at the beginning of my IT career. It was a beautiful coming home, in a sense, to be on the production side. I've actually participated in a number of dummies books for Wiley Publishing. In fact, I might want to check them out and see if they need any help now. But even then, I knew going into it that my Azure for Dummies book was going to have a shelf life, and a pretty short one at that, by virtue of how fast the Microsoft Azure cloud platform moves. So I intentionally tried to focus on as evergreen topics as I could. And what's evergreen? Well, it's a metaphor that means it won't go out of date. Are there any publishers that I think are doing it right in terms of 21st century IT? Yeah, I would say of them all, Manning books, if you're familiar with the Manning books, they have probably the smartest business model. Where as an author operates, they're actually publishing the book as the author's writing it and soliciting feedback from readers. They do this through they've got an app, like a mobile app, tablet app, browser-based access. That's a really smart way to put a book together because you're gathering live feedback to make sure that what's in the book and will ultimately be committed forever. Because once the book is physically printed, any words in there are going to be captured in perpetuity, you know? So Manning's got probably the smartest model. O'Reilly Press, similar in terms of early access and having people see a book as it's being written and offering feedback to make it as impactful as possible. I like the LeanPub platform, if you've heard of that, Lean, Lean, pub, pub.com. I've worked with them a little bit and in fact, I've got a couple titles I'm considering right now thinking of publishing through LeanPub. That's fair to the author in terms of you have more control over your work and your royalty stream. And also, by virtue of the LeanPub ebook being essentially a website, you can update it when needs dictate. So I think that for cloud computing and contemporary IT, your best bet is to stick with online sources. First-party docs would be my go-to. And if you're in the Microsoft space, you're especially well taken care of because Microsoft invests very heavily in their Learn platform. In fact, I worked for Microsoft for a little over a year, so I've been behind the curtain in their docs infrastructure, and it's always been good, and it's never better than it is right now, in my opinion. So, first-party documentation, community evangelist blogs. Again, to use Microsoft as an example, you'll want to subscribe to blogs by MVPs, Microsoft Most Valuable Professionals, who are regularly contributing high-impact tutorials, lessons, thoughts in a way online that's easily updatable when the technology is changing. It always is changing after all. Now, I understand nostalgia. I have plenty of friends and family members who say, Tim, I just can't give up print books. I love having the paper in my hand, the smell of the ink. I get all that 100%. That said, I do 100% of my reading online, either on a computer monitor or when I'm reading for pleasure or reading in bed, I've got a Kindle, I've got an iPad. And one thing I like about that, well, there's a number of things. Number one, I can adjust the size of the font and the brightness. My eyes aren't exactly young anymore. Number two, I love how Kindle allows you to look up words in the dictionary and see frequently highlighted passages. Some really nice benefits conveyed by consuming print material in an ebook format. Honestly, you can probably see behind me some books on my shelf. You know what's in that bookshelf? If you were to look at that bookshelf up close, you'd see a bunch of young adult literature. You'd see some dictionaries and thesauri and encyclopedias from the 70s and 80s. Basically, for me, at this point in my life, the only print books I care to have are ones from my childhood that were impactful to me. It's a hobby that I have. I'll sometimes meditate and think about what was that science. In fact, there's still a science and technology encyclopedia that I can't find. Normally, if I meditate long enough, I can get a clear picture of some book or magazine from my childhood, and then I'll hit up eBay trying to source one and add it to my nostalgia shelf. But my Aunt Diana and Uncle Joe had a set of science and technology encyclopedias from like the 60s. And I remember the distinctive art style, but I can't for the life of me have a clearer picture or understand or remember even the name of the dictionary or encyclopedia, rather. That's my next frontier. But sure, I love the smell of the binding, the glue, the ink, the paper. In fact, I'll do that to this point. My daughter Zoe is 13, and she likes print and ebooks. She actually leans toward print books. And it's always nice when I get her a graphic novel or something, take a great big huff of the ink and the paper. That's always a nice feeling. And I understand that some of my friends in IT have a similar nostalgia and a preference for paper books rather than electronic books. One nice thing about LeanPub as a publisher is that you can always, if you buy a LeanPub ebook, you can print it, of course. You can send it to your tablet, of course. And as a LeanPub author, you can actually have your book bound in a physical format. I believe you can do that at Amazon as well if you self-publish through them. So you can have a little bit of the best of both worlds. Hope that all makes sense. Think it's an interesting topic. Involves a lot of childhood nostalgia, at least for somebody at my point in life. But as far as IT books and the print, I guess I'll end with one more thought that just popped into my head. There are a couple publishers that still, by sheer force of will and brute force, continue pushing forward, going all in on print books, trying to flood the market. It's Packt Publishing, P-A-C-K-T. I mean, I give them credit because if you're looking for a current subject in IT in a print book format, dollars to donuts, Packt has you covered. And I almost guarantee that's exactly their business model. They understand that IT really moves too fast for 99% of the print book publishers, so they're going to be that one provider that floods and fills in the market with all of this current generation technology in a print book. The problem that I see with Packt, this is just my opinion, is the same problem I see with some e-commerce websites where they're trying to push and flood the market as fast as they can, is that quality control almost invariably suffers. And so I personally don't like Packt because I think their editorial standard is very variable. The quality of the output, the actual products, the books, is highly variable because they're moving so quickly, they may settle for an author who's not a great fit for that particular subject matter. You see what I'm saying? So I would have you look doubly hard at Packt before you go for it. Actually, what I recommend my students do is go on the basis of personal referral rather than just do an Amazon search for a subject. Packt is the only choice, I'm going to buy it. I would hesitate. Ask a colleague, ask around if anybody has read that book and what did they think first. Because you got to trust your sources with IT. All right, Reno, that's all I got for you this morning. I'm feeling a bit drowsy, so I've got my first espresso here. Definitely a few more to follow. I got to get on focus here. In the meantime, thanks a lot for sticking to the end. I appreciate you. I'll see you next time. Later.